Well, I'd like to thank all of our speakers this morning for staying right within their time limits. We have a few minutes left to have some discussion, so I'd invite all the speakers to come up on stage and take a seat with one of the soon-to-be spotlighted microphones, I suspect. So we have a few minutes. Heather, I don't know if we're going to push into the break a little bit. Okay. I'll depend on Heather to stop us when the bar falls. Please come to the microphone with questions or comments, and Jacqueline is there ready to go.
Yeah, I have a comment. I really have to disagree with you that everybody has these devices. So a colleague of ours, Britta Larson, I'm not sure whether she's here, applied to do a pilot of diabetes in Latinas in the clinics here. And again, the reviewer said to her, do not do in-person or phone counseling. Use the web, some technology, because everybody has it. So she revised her proposal, did that. She's in the clinics now. None of these people have computers in their homes or access to internet. I've just done some formative work, again, with Latinas, a bit older, so maybe not relevant to the adult, but Britta's was with adults. And I'm saying, okay, apps, will you take a standing desk to your home? Are you working on your computer? No, I don't have a mobile phone, and I do not have a computer in my home. So, you know, I think, I agree it's getting bigger, and there's many people that we can reach. But for us to just have this sort of, you know, generalized statements about it, it's just not the case in every population.
Is it so? For sure, cup is half full or cup is half empty is the honest answer. We did a study in George Washington University and one in New York City with the Hispanics Medicaid population, a third of whom were homeless. 81% of them had smartphones. They didn't have an extra loaf of bread to eat, but they had smartphones. Go figure. We've done programs in Mexico. We've done programs in India, in China. And is it 100%? Absolutely not. Is it growing? Dramatically. Are we getting to the point where their first internet experience is on a mobile device? Absolutely. The World Cup soccer final last time was watched by 5.9 billion people, but there's only 1.2 billion TV sets in the world. And there's only 1.7 billion PCs in the world. The rest were all mobile devices. So accepted, granted, but cup is half full, saying these people are getting these technologies because the cost of these Android devices are just plummeting. They're becoming virtual. I mean, in India, they're like $8 for an Android phone. So I hear you. I think what we have to do is ask the bigger question is, how do we get these people these devices? How do we get these people connected? How do we bridge that digital divide? And how do we take advantage of the growing ubiquity? And I think that's the question we should all kind of band together. But you're right. It's not 100, but we're getting there.
Anna, hiding over there in the corner.
Yeah. So fantastic talks. First of all, thank you guys so much, and such speed. So I hate to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway because David's not here. So pretend that I'm a shorter and male, but I want to connect the dots between the talks yesterday and the talks today. None of you mentioned assays. So for measuring diet, we're talking about measuring diet.
I thought of it this morning, but I didn't add it to my slides. You're right.
So
biomarkers.
So there are no biomarkers.
Yeah.
So how do we, you know, when I cornered David last night at dinner and said, okay, I'm putting in a grant. Right now I've got 3-day dietary recalls in there because I'm not necessarily interested in energy intake. I'm interested in certain nutrients for this particular intervention. What do you suggest? And he said, well, I wouldn't fund it. I wouldn't fund it if it was dietary recall or 3-day recall. You've got to do assays. I said, okay, which assays? And he said, well, you know, none of them are really very good. It's like, for Christ's sake. So, you know, what now, guys? Because I think it's really a problem. I mean, I've chaired study sections where they've torpedoed these poor young researchers because they're, you know, acolytes of David, because they are doing 3-day dietary recalls, which is the gold standard that we have right now. They're torpedoed. What do? I think we're in a bind.
I don't know if there's a real answer to that right now. I mean, you're right. Yeah. But, and I don't know if I would agree that the biomarkers, I mean, there's some really good work being done in biomarkers. We have a relationship with DSM, and they've been doing a lot of work on biomarkers, and they really are passionate about it. So, but just as you said,
When somebody says they're doing a lot of good work, it means that it's not ready for prime time.
no, some of it is. No, I think some of it is. I mean, certainly if you, and I'm not a biomarker person, but if you go back, whatever, 10, 20 years ago, there were very few. And there's more than a few now, and I couldn't rattle off which ones, but certainly vitamin D and some others are now there and do a pretty good job. They give you an amount of that nutrient that's in the blood, right? But they don't tell you how they got there.
Right.
So that's one of the issues. And talking to DSM, I keep on telling them, I think even if you do a biomarker, and it depends on what kind of research you're doing, it still may need some type of dietary intake in combination so that you know if it's an intervention, what do you do about it, right? You're low in vitamin D, well, but maybe you're consuming a lot of vitamin D foods, or maybe you're not, maybe you're in the sun, maybe you're not, there's still a lifestyle issue component to that you need to track. So I think all of us are saying there's no simple solution yet, and we're still working on it.
And I think, and I was asking this yesterday, I think the hard part is too, it matters what reviewers you're going to get, because if you put in, your 30-day food record, you're going to have some reviewers who are like, well, no, that's terrible, that needs to go. But then if you put in some of this new technology, they're going to be, well, we don't know enough about this. Why would we fund something we don't know is actually going to be, valid, reliable, and a good outcome measure? So you're kind of in a lose-lose. And that's why I even asked, I guess, David yesterday, what to do. And he said, have a subsample using doubly labeled water. Well, that can be kind of hard to do, and I mean, doubly labeled water costs what it costs, and the other bigger problem is actually getting it analyzed. Most people, don't have an expert there who can just look at that water, and so you have to send it off somewhere. And so I mean, I still don't think there is an answer. I think it's, if you're writing a grain, it's playing the game and seeing what reviewers you get and what they want.
Yeah, I of course I want to get the grant.
Yeah.
Really, I want to answer my question.
Yeah.
That's what's the best way to answer my question? I want to know things. I'm a curious one.
So with luck, we'll put that on the agenda for further research or things that need to be dug into. So I have a question, just an ask, I guess. But thanks again. Great presentations. I agree. I really appreciate the overviews this morning. One thing I didn't hear you talk about, which is this thing, actually two new things that are on the horizon that are exploding. One is passive voice. How many have an Alexa? I have two of them in my home actually now, and they're phenomenal to interact with in terms of and just this notion of speaking and saying as opposed to taking pictures and whatnot. So I think that's something that we need to pay attention to with Google Home and whatnot. And it is an enormous window into some other technologies that we have talked about. The connectedness that you were talking about, Anand, bringing things to you is great. Another thing I didn't hear much talk about was this notion, especially in diet, but also potentially in activity, of the ambient passive collection of data from cameras, RFID tags, other things that are in the environment or in the supply chain for foods and things like this. This came up a little bit yesterday, but this is just this whole notion all the way up to the swipe card data and the massive terabytes of data that are at neighborhood and community levels from shopping centers and whatnot. And so I'm just sort of putting that on the table as an adjunct to other things that we might think about that could give a collective understanding of intakes of food and also activity. We touched on that yesterday. And then Snapchat glasses. Anybody playing around with those? I mean, Google, the Google Glass failed miserably, but watch this. They're taking out 10 seconds of stuff. Just tap there. Bingo, you've got it. You can store 200 of these little Snapchat videos on your phone. Imagine the use of something like that. And it's just, that might be a magical sort of thing to add into our toolbox of things.
So if I had an extra half an hour, I would have told you about a couple things. So we are using voice recognition also in our mobile stuff, and we're looking at natural language components of it. So I'm thinking about it. Yeah, absolutely. And going to your point about we've actually I live in Princeton, New Jersey, and there's a company there called Heartland Payment System, which was the 5th largest credit card processor in the country. They got acquired by someone, but their major customer is restaurants, and we try to do some work with them that ties with someone orders with the bill that they get processed, right? So going back to your ties, and then there's a company called Freckle PHRQL out of Pittsburgh that's doing some work in the grocery store chains and using it's very hard to work with a grocery store and get to the loyalty information, but somehow they figured out how to do it with a couple. And so there's things being done there too. So I think we only hit the tip of the iceberg in some of the concepts, and I'm sure there's a lot more. So there's a lot going on.
I'll just share one more. I think yeah, the what you're talking about partially is the technology, but more importantly the user experience. At the end of the day, we as a community of solution providers and a research hub, we should never dictate you have to use this technology. It's the only way it's going to work. They should use whatever technology is appropriate for them, right? And so whether the input is given, whether it's by touch or it's by sight or it's by speech, or we really don't care. Let them do what they want to do at that time. So that's one area of research, and there's actually a lot of stuff happening. The other one that I'll point out, I don't know if anybody knows this company, Proteus Biomedical, that does the coding, RF coding on the tablets. But when you start to think about the use cases of technologies like that, okay, it's great that you can track any drug, and it's foolproof. Think about it. I can open my pill cap, and I can close it, and it thinks I took my Januvia. All right? I can go and dump it at home, right? Whereas the only way I can cheat this Proteus thing is I give Rick my drug, and I stand beside his gut and take his signal. But that's kind of, I'm not gonna. That's kind of freaky, right? That doesn't happen. But now imagine.
Is it a good drug?
Yes. Now imagine doing that with foods, where you can actually track down your. So the other use that you see not in this aspect of health, but in mental health. Anybody know this company called Misfit Wearables? Sunny Boo's company. Yeah. So Sunny did a whole bunch of work and experimented with clothes, and we were together at a show at Boston Consulting Group's annual partnership thing, and I gave my talk, and he had like these fashion models. It was Miami. He had these fashion models walk with these dresses, and the dresses had these nanosensors, and so the lady would walk by, and then somebody would take this cup of water, cold water, and splash it on them, and all of a sudden the dress color changed. Okay. And we're like, wow, that's really cool. I'd hate to date a woman with a dress like that. You would know what they're thinking. But think about a wounded warrior who has PTSD, who's on the verge of having an anxiety attack or stressed or whatever, and all of a sudden their shirt color changes. There's a whole bunch of stuff happening in this space, in this nano space, that we bring into this. That is it there for prime time? Nope. Will it be there within the next 5 to 8 years? You better believe it, yeah.
Hi, Josh Anthony, Campbell Soup Company, and thank you all for some great talks. The biomarker question, or just as we're talking about analysis, kind of got me thinking a little bit about a big need for this field, and that is, it's like I tend to be surprised how fast we tear down a lot of different markers and measures. So part of that has to be because on one side, sometimes it's justified, right? Some different measures, whatever they are, devices or biomarkers or behavior approach, they may be crap, so they need to be set aside. I think that there's this middle ground where there are a lot of good measures, or, and let's biological or non-biological, but they are good for something. They haven't necessarily been proven out. Because any of us in this room could take any measure and come up with some reason why it is not going to be good. It's a burden. We don't have data long term. It's relative, right? And I think, coming back to Dave Allison's talk, what I took apart is that benchmark. What are you benchmarking it against? So I kind of feel that as we're looking at research, we have to be very declarative or very honest about what we know and what we don't, right? This marker, this set of markers, these measures are good for this. Why this research is important is we have not answered that question yet. And, and so I just worry sometimes that, honestly, that we get in our own way in terms of advancing the field. Because everybody, because it becomes an exercise in terms of how far can we go to find out why something's not good, as opposed to all of us working better about being very honest and transparent about what it's good for, what it's not for, but that's the basis for what we have to answer. So I just kind of want to put that on the table because I see that being a big issue as we look at application of technology, as we look at applications of personalized or precision medicine or nutrition, right? How do we get past that to move the field forward?
Very well said.
Chorsan, did you have a question or comment?
I
Rick, you mentioned the word precision food. And I think there's a lot of confusion nowadays, depending on discipline. Some disciplines are more advanced, between the word precision food, precision medicine, and personalized food and personalized diet. I think we need to clarify that, because I don't think it's interchangeable, because where precision medicine is moving, they move away from personalized medicine to precision medicine based on, the IOM workshop. That's exactly what they say. We need to move to that. Very targeted use of medicine for a specific purpose. I think in the nutrition field, we need to clarify our vocabulary, because we're still thinking about personalized nutrition when in fact some of the things we're doing are actually moving towards precision diet or precision food. Mm-hmm. So I think at least we need to think about that. The other point you brought up is most of our standards in terms of any assessment we do is against standards, and we talk about HAI as, the HAI standard was based on compliance with dietary guidelines. Yet, the dietary guidelines that we have, or even the DRI, have really not been, I would say, been clinically tested. I mean, those are all based on consensus from each committee, and then we put the whole diet together. But yet, we built so much credence on the fact that we believe that these standards that we have from the dietary guidelines or the DRI, this is what we should have our cut points. So should we be worried about that?
I'll go back to Josh's comment though. It's at least, and I'm more focused really on the clinical side than on the research side. And when I talk to my development team, because my staff is all software development focus, is that I don't want them to be so focused on perfection versus doing something useful. And so the bottom line with HEI and how we're using HEI is what we're generating useful? Does it cause a positive impact? And I believe it's absolutely, but it may not be the most perfect way of doing anything, but we'll get there over time. We'll figure out what's wrong with it and we'll fix it. I remember a talk years ago, I can't remember who it was, but I remember this was early on in my career in doing all this dietary assessment technology, and there was a series of talks all day long, and this one individual from, I know it was Colorado, stood up and said, every single talk that whole day long at the end was a researcher who said, we need more research. And at the bottom line, he said, we really need to move this into actual use and realize that research has to go on, but let's not put a barrier into actually using it and doing something useful with it. And so that's how I view dietary patterns. It's still an early thing, but is there usefulness in using it? And I think there is.
Lauren, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I had a question kind of back to Rick. That's okay.
Depends on the question.
Well, I'm going to start. I like HEI. I think it's good because it kind of quantifies things differently. Instead of just looking, are you meeting these micro, macro, energy intake, guidelines, it's okay, what kind of food groups are you eating? And you can look at change differently that way. I do really like it. However, there is a lot out there that's been published recently looking at different measures of diet quality. So HEI, Mediterranean Diet Index, the alternate HEI. And what they're finding is the HEI is actually the poorest in terms of clinical relevance. So if someone is actually, their HEI score didn't really correlate with any kind of health outcome. And so that's kind of my question. When we're thinking about that, when we're looking at this, do we know the clinical, you really want to move everyone 5 points up, but do we know the clinical significance of that? Will it really impact them long term? So that's just kind of my question back to you is what have you seen?
We're still working on it. So, but I agree with you. We picked HEI because, to be honest, it was the easiest one to work on first. But our plans are to expand beyond HEI and have AMED and AHEI and the DASH diet, and there's probably another 10 out there. So which is the best? It may go back to what we've said for the last 2 days. You have to pick the scenario of what you're interested in and use the one that's appropriate for that. So and I believe that there's new scores, and actually beyond just a dietary score, why don't we have a lifestyle score that combines diet and physical activity and stress and all those other things and allows us to measure all of them in composite form and provide feedback based on that. And that's, to me, where we get into longer projections and now use machine learning and have these massive databases and all that. You know, this is, we're still at the tip of the iceberg. I keep on, that cliche just keeps on working more and more, but we've got decades more work to make all of these things really work in precision mode.
No, go ahead, please.
Well, we're running out of time, and Sai's been standing up there, so a critical comment here. I think we'll carry this on throughout the day.
Can I just clarify some of the misinformation that just came out, though?
Sure.
I don't want. Okay, so with regard to the healthy eating index, as well as these other dietary patterns that are used for assessing diet quality, what a group has been doing, the Dietary Patterns Methods Project, which you shared some of that work, Rick, one of the only indicators that we have found that we can work with that everyone agrees on, because it's difficult. You know, when we get to clinical markers, there's a lot of disagreement. But mortality is something that no one can argue about. And so what a group of us have been doing is we have been taking large populations. So I work with a population that we've been monitoring, about 215,000. And then we have the one that you showed that they even have more. And what we've been able to consistently show is that with mortality associated to overall mortality, mortality from cancer, mortality from heart disease, and now we are zeroing down and looking at mortality from specific endpoints, and HEI consistently comes out with being the individuals in the higher quality of HEI diet consistently come out with the lower risk of any of these mortality endpoints. And so the clinical endpoints, that's another discussion, but with regard to the endpoint of mortality, there's no question that HEI does very, very well consistently.
Thanks, Carol.
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Sai, last question, and then we'll let the time police
I just want to point
out
out that I'm really glad that we reopened the issue of talking about doubly-labeled water and the biomarkers, and I want to echo Rick's comment. There are done a very good biomarkers, and what I would do is focus on those that are on the labels, because one of the issues that we haven't touched upon is supplement use, which, you know, we're doing a lot of that because that is the one area where we can agree on, and because of all this changing nutrition. So people are taking a lot of supplements, and, you know, we focus on capturing the image of the food, we focus on the reporting of intake, but supplement use is completely, somewhat overlooked. And so biomarkers will not correlate very well if we completely miss out on that supplement use, and therefore I would strongly encourage and reinforce what Rick pointed out. For some markers, depending on the duration of exposure, there are excellent biomarkers, and focusing on what's represented in labels would be a good way to start. Thank you.
Super. All right, I'm going to bring Heather up to kind of tell us our next marching orders and moving on through the day. And I want to let's again thank all of our speakers for some really good presentations and discussion.
Okay, it's breakout group time again. So the red group again is going to stay here. Jim Hill will be the discussion leader. Blue, you're going back to 5302 with the beautiful view. Lynette Kraft from ACSM will be the leader. And the green group is going back to 4004 with Rick Troiano as the discussion leader. And if you want to take a 5-minute break, let's convene in about 5 minutes, and then we'll come back here at 11:15 to report out.